Hey guys, how's it going? It's Al. I've got another fantasy football video for you for your draft season that starts very, very soon, just a couple of weeks away. If some of you are already drafting in terms of best ball, I know that there's going to be a big best ball tournament that's going to be coming out sooner rather than later. If you're drafting high stakes for one of the national leagues, you're already doing your drafting as well. I've put in a couple of leagues in that. Hopefully your Scott Fishbowl leagues went well. But if you haven't drafted yet, or if you've got a bunch of drafts coming up, I've got Adam Levitan from EstablishTheRun.com to join me on the show today, and we are going to talk about different draft strategies and how you apply them, which ones we prefer, because everybody wants to talk about, well, you should be drafting zero RB, you should be drafting hyper fragile, you should be drafting anti-fragile, you should be drafting robust running back, quarterbacks shouldn't be drafted until later. We're going to dig into a little bit of what those things mean, as well as how we're going to alter our drafting based on our position in the draft in a snake draft. If you're drafting 1 through 4 versus 5 through 8 versus 9 through 12, the different strategies, at least personally for me, that I approach things, especially when I'm drafting a lot of leagues like I do in best ball, I have a little bit of a different strategy, or I have a couple of different strategies that I can employ from the top of the first round versus from the back of the first round. So we're going to dig into all that. Adam, how you doing today, man?
Hey, I'm doing well. What's going on?
Not much. I wish we could get your video for this show, but at least we have your son and the beautiful beast, Jerry, here, instead of just your voice like we've had on the couple of other videos that we've had. So first, I just want to go through quickly the different types of draft strategies that there are. There's running back robust or the hyper fragile approach. Running back is the most vulnerable position to injury, to just volatility overall. So most people go with a later running back strategy, right? They want to avoid running backs. They want to take things that are a little bit less fragile, like wide receivers or the premium tight ends in the first few rounds. And then they'll take their running backs later as there is more upside to taking them there. And if you're going to have the least volatility in your lineup, you want to do something like that. However, the robust running back or hyper fragile approach, which is how people used to draft, which is taking running backs early all the time and loading up there and then just taking the wide receivers that you can. Obviously, the league has changed. PPR scoring has kind of changed the way that things go as opposed to 10, 15 years ago when everybody was basically running mostly touchdown scoring only leagues. Maybe they did half point PPR. So the hyper fragile approach would be to say, I'm going to load up on 3, 4, maybe 5 running backs in the first 6 or 7 rounds, and then I'm going to fill in with the other players later. I don't have to draft all that much depth at running back. I don't need things to happen, especially in terms of best ball format, when you know you're going to get 20 plus touches out of at least 2 of those running backs and maybe 3. So you take that hyper fragile approach. And if your running backs do stay healthy, those teams do tend to smash. A zero running back philosophy, which has been adopted by many in the metrics community, is something where they want to draft more wide receivers, tight ends. They still wait on quarterbacks, and they want to take a less fragile approach by loading up on guys that get injured a lot less and have a more defined role. To me, that depends on where I'm drafting, because if I'm drafting 1 through 5, I am not taking a wide receiver or a tight end in that spot. So on those leagues where I'm drafting a lot of teams, like a best ball tournament, I tend to go with a hyper fragile approach and draft 3 or 4 running backs early if I have an early pick, and I'm more likely to go zero running back if I'm at the back half of the first round. Adam, how do you approach draft? Does it matter if you are drafting early or late, or do you have kind of a same philosophy on just, this is how I draft? The names may change, but the philosophy stays the same regardless of where I'm picking in the first round.
Yeah, no, I think it would be a mistake just to say I'm going into a draft with this strategy and this is what I'm going to do no matter what. That would be silly, because if a player falls to me who I really like a round too late, well, of course, I'm still going to take him regardless of position. I want to explain what kind of we're talking about with vulnerability of running backs. Like, remember last year when LaShawn McCoy got cut by the Bills 1 week before week 1 and he signs with the Chiefs?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you wouldn't see this with any other position, not wide receiver, not quarterback. I mean, guys don't get cut and then join a new team and all of a sudden Damian Williams' value was just tanked. Damian Williams went from like a 2nd, 3rd round pick to like an 8th round pick because LaShawn McCoy showed up, and it proved to be right. I mean, they used LaShawn McCoy at the beginning of the season a bunch. So that just doesn't happen at other positions. So yeah, you're going to be more fragile at the running back position. I think what's changed now is that the running backs who actually get full workloads are so much fewer and far between that they stand out so far above the rest. So what you get are these guys at the top like Zeke and McCaffrey and Barkley and Derrick Henry and Mixon and Miles Sanders and Kenyon Drake and all these guys that are going really high. They stand out so much more than these middle round guys who I just want no part of. So what's happened to me, my optimal draft would be trying to get 2 of those guys that I really like. And if you draft at the back end of the first round, it's very easy to start Derrick Henry, Miles Sanders, or Mixon, Kenyon Drake, or something like that. It's harder when you draft at the beginning and you start with one of the really big studs like McCaffrey or Zeke or Barkley or Kamara. It's harder in that late second round take guy that you like. You may have to reach for someone. I don't know if you like James Conner, if you like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, whoever, Aaron Jones, whoever you like there. It's harder to start RB, but you can still do it. The key to me this year is that in the middle of drafts, wide receiver is just the best. I mean, God, it's impossible for me to pass on Adam Thielen in the 4th, or Calvin Ridley in the 5th, or DK Metcalf in the 5th, or Tyler Lockett in the 6th. Like I physically can't do it. I can't pass on those guys in those rounds. So almost all of these constructions this year are RBs early, wide receivers through the middle, quarterbacks late, figure everything else out. And I think that's the optimal. And that's what I think most people should be doing unless you're coming in with a different kind of strategy.
And you were saying running backs that could be available to you in your draft around, if you're picking early, if you're picking 1, 2, 3, or 4, obviously at the top of that draft, you're going to get guys like McCaffrey or Barkley or Zeke Elliott or Kamara or Cook. And then if you're coming back around the 24-25 turn, you're getting somebody like, let's say maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire falls. You might have access to him at 24-25. Guys like Todd Gurley, who I personally am avoiding this year. He's one of my avoid running backs. I just can't trust him, and I don't know about that system and how it fits him. Great that he's going home. James Conner is somebody that I like. You have Leonard Fournette, guy that you like to talk about a lot. Uncle Lenny, is he going to have the volume that he had before? Melvin Gordon moving to Denver. And then you're taking reaches on guys if you're taking them at 24-25, like Taylor, Bell, Carson, David Johnson. So yeah, running back, once you get to about the 20th running back, their volume gets really, really spotty. You could even say that about running back 14 and beyond, right? Where Clyde Edwards-Helaire, is he going to be the guy? Todd Gurley, can he sustain a full season based on how he looked last year? Leonard Fournette, his volume could drop as well. Melvin Gordon, he's got to deal with Lindsey there in Denver. So yeah, a lot of running back dries up. So for me, if I'm drafting early, I'm probably going with a running back robust sort of a situation. Or maybe just say, you know what, I'm going to go 0 running back, take the running back at the top, and then load up on all the other guys. Because it is easier to get those 2 high volume running backs at 12 and 13, right, than it is if you go 1, 24, 25.
Yeah, and you can certainly make a pretty good case for if you were to pick, and I hate passing on one of the big guys, if you were able to pick your draft spot, picking at the back end of the first round, because that 1-2 turn, you can take 2 running backs, and 3-4, you will get 2 awesome wide receivers.
There definitely are spaces or places that allow you to prove, they do like a draft lottery, sort of, but they allow you to prioritize which spots you want. If you had to pick your top 3 spots to pick this year, they would be in order.
Yeah. 1.1 first for McCaffrey.
Yeah.
And then probably somewhere in the back, 1.11 or 1.10, I think would be next.
So you don't want the 12-13 turn. You just want to be kind of at the back of the first round, but not the sandwich picks.
Yeah, generally speaking, I think picking back to back is kind of a disadvantage just because you don't have as much information on what your opponents are going to do. At least when I'm at 11, I know I can have a guess at what the opponent in the turn is going to do because I can look at his team.
And you're like me, you hate picking in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, this year just seems bad. It's also a waste of my precious time to constantly be looking back at the draft board.
You're like, I want to make 2 picks. I want to get the hell out for like a week.
Exactly. The team smell their roses.
Yeah. See, I hate the middle picks. I always have hated the middle picks. I don't want to pick between 5 and 10 ever. So for me, my top 3 spots in a place where they would allow me to have preference would be 101, and I would take the other end of it. I would take the 12 pick, and then probably 2, and then 11. And I'd probably work my way centrally that way, front, back, until I got to 6, 7 as my last 2 picks that I would want priority wise. So that's philosophy that I'm going with. Now, middle rounds for your draft strategy that you would assign. Before we get to that, let's talk about tight ends, because in recent years, until maybe last year, And I think that last year is looking very similar to how this year looks. And maybe that's a philosophical change across the NFL and how it's affecting fantasy football. Tight end this year, much like quarterback, quarterback's been deep for a lot of years. It's way deeper this year and last year than it ever has been. And tight end as well is so deep this year, just like it ended up last year and looked that way through draft season last year. I've been a guy who's spent some draft capital on the premium tight ends for the last 6 years or so. I don't think it had to be done last year, and I don't know that it needs to be done this year unless you're in maybe a tight end premium league. So there are so many tight ends that are available later that project to have a very carved out role with a lot of targets in this offense. This is not your dad's three targets, 2 catches, 30 yards and a touchdown tight ends. We've got guys that are being drafted a lot later that have ability. The 10th tight end right now is Mike Gesicki, and we saw what he did late in the season last year. This is an off the charts athlete playing the position of tight end who saw a lot of targets. So what is your perspective on tight ends? I mean, last year we had guys like Darren Waller coming in as like an 18th round pick and producing top tight end type numbers just off of ADP currently. Hayden Hurst, who moved to Atlanta to fill the Austin Hooper role, is the tight end 9. Gesicki is 10. Jared Cook in New Orleans from Drew Brees is 11. Rob Gronkowski, coming back from, quote, retirement, is 12. And Austin Hooper, now in Cleveland, is 13. We have some very seriously gifted athletes with carved out roles in their offense, all the way down to like tight end 15 to 20.
Yeah, I actually haven't been spending draft capital at the tight end position. I've been passing on Kelsey the last few years and passing on Ertz and Kittle. And they had that just one outrageous season where they all went off. I believe it was 2018. And if you had Kelsey or Ertz or Kittle constructions, it was just a total smash. I think generally speaking, I think I prefer to go late round tight end from a raw point production standpoint. They're just going to be less. And I get the advantage that you get. I just think that I am going to try to find the next Darren Waller. Darren Waller was like a layup last year. I mean, all the sharp people had Darren Waller on their teams last year. Just the easy pick. I think there's options this year. And I actually think it goes deeper than the guys you said. I don't even really like the guys you said. I like to go even deeper. I think that if you take 2 or 3 of Gesicki, Hawkinson, Jarwin, Ian Thomas, like one of those guys hopefully emerges as an every week starter for you. And when you don't invest a lot of draft capital on them early, you can start stockpiling them late. So you can take Fant and Hawkinson and Gesicki, and it's okay to have 3 tight ends on your team and hope one of them turns into the next Darren Waller. So I think that I like that strategy at tight end, and I'm not going to be, I doubt that I'm going to be on much Kelsey, Kittle, Ertz.
To me, it's the 15 to 20 guys like you mentioned. Noah Fant, another tremendous athlete. Dallas Goedert got knocked out. I don't know if he has woken up yet from that club knockout that he got, if he's going to be ready for the season or if he's still K the F-O'd. Jonnu Smith, another top 1% athlete. Blake Jarwin, a lot of vacated targets on Dallas between Randall Cobb, who I expect the rookie to step into that slot role, as well as Blake Jarwin stepping into the aged one, Jason Witten's role now in that offense. He's the tight end 18. You mentioned Ian Thomas, the tight end 20. There's a lot of guys, and they're not just, this is a blocking tight end and maybe he'll catch a ball. These are guys that can play, that can move, that can get out and run routes. And percentage of routes run by a tight end is something that is extremely important. So late round tight end, very viable strategy this year, as opposed to not last year. I thought it was viable as well, obviously, but the 2-3 years before that, I was very heavily investing in the premium tight ends. Because they were going in the 2nd and 3rd rounds. Now you're seeing Kittle be, the 9th player overall, and Kittle going 13th overall. As they've climbed up the board, I think the value is now taking the guys that are being drafted as tight end 2s, much like Waller was, and moving up the board so you don't have to spend that much draft capital. Which brings us to wide receivers. How much should you be loading up, let's say in a friends and family league versus a high stakes season long league or a best ball league? Where should we be loading up on wide receivers?
Yeah. So I don't think friends and family leagues are going to realize like how good of a wide receiver you can get in round like 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, ridiculous. You can get Will Fuller in round 7. You can get Marquise Brown in round 7. You can get Devontae Parker in round 6 or 7. And that's not even to mention the guys like Calvin Ridley and Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf and Adam Thielen and Juju Smith-Schuster. All these guys are just outrageously strong plays at their current ADPs. So yeah, to me, in almost all formats, that mid-round range, like rounds 3, 4, 5, and 4, 5, 6. I mean, I'm hard pressed not to take a wide receiver there, and you can really build a strong core. And you don't even have to get into the flyer range. You know, I mean, you don't even have to get into the late round picks. I mean, you can get Henry Ruggs, who I think is really underrated despite being a rookie in like round 11 or 12, and that's just insane too. So yeah, there's just so much depth at wide receiver. I would let them fall to you and just start picking off value.
Kind of as you were talking about, right? Let's look at the top 50 wide receivers that are being taken right now in terms of ADP. Yes, Michael Thomas is amazing. Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, DeAndre Hopkins, all those guys. Great. Not saying anything about them. 39 right now in terms of ADP, Odell Beckham Jr., Juju Smith-Schuster, 37th overall. A.J. Brown, wide receivers going into their second year, guys. Big leap being taken by a lot of wide receivers historically in their second year. Adam Thielen, so many vacated targets. Who are they going to throw the ball to? 44th overall. Calvin Ridley, somebody that I know that Evan Silva is very high at over at establishtheRun.com. You can go check out their articles that are all behind the paywall and read all of his thoughts on Calvin Ridley, all of the love that he has for him. A.J. Brown at 45. My son, Cooper Kupp, at 47.5. DK Metcalf, an absolute monster, 56. DJ Chark, the year he had, almost 60th overall. The depth at wide receiver is so beyond ridiculous this year that as much as I loved having guys like Michael Thomas or Julio Jones at 12 and 13 last year when I was going zero RB philosophy for certain drafts, if I had that end of the first round spot, just having the ability to take these guys later. Terry McLaurin, a guy that I'm extremely high on for this year, 58th overall. Just look at all the type of players that you can get. Brandon Cooks moving to Houston with all the vacated targets that left in the David Johnson trade with DeAndre Hopkins. His ADP is 97th. Before we get into like sleeper guys like Deontay Johnson or Christian Kirk or whoever else. So a lot of value and a lot of opportunity for wide receivers in the middle to even middle late rounds. As far as I'm concerned, and obviously quarterback, just wait on quarterback, right?
Oh, I mean, there's so many. I mean, I like Teddy Bridgewater super late. I mean, you don't have to go that deep. Like I like Burrow and Bridgewater super late, but you could get Carson Wentz in the 10th. You could get Matthew Stafford in the 11th. Like it's not even necessary. So yeah, I think there's an argument to be made for Mahomes and Lamar, depending on how far they fall to you. But I think if you don't get one of those two, waiting 10th, 11th, 12th is more than fine.
Define falls for Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, because currently those two are sitting at an ADP of around 25 and 26, which means that if you're picking first overall, God, if you come out of a draft with Christian McCaffrey, some other running back or stud wide receiver, and then one of Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, right, that's a pretty solid start, and it comes down to value. I like to wait on quarterback, but good God, if these two can come close to mimicking their stats from last year, outstanding value at the 2-3 turn.
Yeah, I mean, the argument against taking a quarterback early is always that it's a position which doesn't differentiate itself well, right? Like the number 12 quarterback is not very different from the number 1 quarterback. However, in the case of Lamar and Mahomes, it is, if you think, as Al said, they can sustain anywhere close to their production. So, I would never, ever in my life thought I'd say this, but I don't think it's egregious to take Mahomes or Lamar in the 3rd round.
That's where I'm standing, right? And if you're in an industry league and you're drafting like 4th in a super sharp league, or drafting in the 4th round and people are waiting on QB and nobody wants to take them early, you're actually getting value on that player in the 4th round, because it's all about the value that you're getting versus the pick that you're taking. Don't get locked into, I can't take this player or this position in this round. Look at the value inherent in the pick that you have. Is there anything else that you want to add, Adam?
No, I mean, we've given people everything. How can they not win their league now? We've given them everything.
We gave them a very look. We are just giving them a roadmap that they can hopefully use to make the best picks that they can make in their drafts. And hopefully this video helped you guys. Adam, thank you for joining me once again. You can find Adam and all of his compadres over at establishtheRun.com. There's a link down below, as well as a promo code for 10% off at checkout. in the comment section down below. Leave a comment, or if you have a question for me or Adam, in the replies. Thank you guys for being here, and I'll catch you later. Bye.
He's a legend.